come to order. We'll take a silent roll to determine the approval of last month's minutes. Are there any amendments? All those in favor of the approval of minutes, will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That appears to have it. Ayes do have it. The first item on the agenda is a presentation from the Marshall Moss Housing Complaint Specialist. Marshall Moss, excuse me, Mr. Moss, I'm sorry. The Housing Complaint Specialist and Investigator with the West Virginia Human Rights Commission concerning their housing complaint process in general. Sorry, Mr. Moss.
That's quite all right. Good morning to everyone. Let me clear up one thing real quick. In our in-house designation, and a housing specialist and a housing investigator is basically the same job. We kind of use them interchangeably, unfortunately. So, where it might look like we have one of each, we have two investigators in most cases. We would do basically the same work. First, let me explain that our acting Executive Director, Phyllis Carter, was unable to be with us today. And she had a previous appointment scheduled and couldn't make this meeting, but she will be with us later in the process if she needed. She asked me and my co-worker Josh Brown to come and share some information with you about the fair housing. In the way in which the fair housing unit, I call it a unit, it's not very many of us. Actually, there are three of us right now, but three investigators and one administrative support person. But we call ourselves a unit, and we feel like we're a unit, and we run around the state and do our job that way. So, one of the things I wanted to mention also is, many of you know, this is the 50th anniversary of the Human Rights Act. And fair housing law was given to us much later in that period of time. It's not quite as old as the Human Rights Act, but at the same time, that is what we're here today, I think, to talk to you a little bit about. We brought a couple documents for you, a couple pamphlets that we'll distribute. We don't want to hold up the program by doing a lot of that right now, but we did bring a few pamphlets. And also, I understand you may have already received the annual report in CD form or DVD form. So most of the information that we would normally try to give you can kind of give you a full range of information about the Commission's performance and how we work. And the laws that we covered is in fact contained in here, so we can say a bit at that time and just give you a little information about how the housing unit works, what we do. For example, when a complaint comes in, what happens, and from that point forward, how it's processed, and what the end result is. And talk briefly, have a few clarifications to make on the resolution 160, which we had a chance to look at. There are a couple of clarifications we wanted to kind of point out as we go along. So I understand there will be questions at the end, and we will expect to hear those. And probably more information will be shared or gleaned that way through our responding to your questions. So we're going to keep our presentation pretty short. First thing I would do is ask Josh to talk to you briefly about what happens in terms of the intake or a complaint coming in. And then I'll come back and do a little summary for you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Josh Brown. I'm one of the investigators, housing investigators with the Human Rights Commission. I've been there approximately 3 years now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our intake process and how the public accesses the Commission's services. Basically, there's 3 avenues in which the public can access those. They can either call us over the phone, they can access our forms online on our website, or they can walk into our office and speak with one of us in person. When someone does contact our office, they speak with either myself or one of the other the 3 of us, one of the other housing investigators. We either speak with them on the phone or we'll talk with them in person when they come in. We'll kind of talk to them about their situation and what they're dealing with and and trying to establish if it's an issue that we can assist them with, and then we'll help them in filling out the forms if they need that assistance. And then it goes into our intake process. Now, what they receive is a packet. Basically, it's just an envelope, and in it has some information, some of the brochures that Mr. Moss is going to pass out to you later. Also, is what we call a background information form. It's basically just a simple form. We ask for their information, the information on the housing that is in question, the landlord and whatnot, and also a description of their issue. And that's what we base the drafting of the complaint on, is the information that they provide us. So we will receive this background form in our office. It'll go to our administrative support personnel, and they log it in and make sure we keep track of all that. And then it's assigned to one of us investigators to actually draft the complaint. And we will speak with the person again and clarify any issues that were not made clear in this report, so we can get dates correct and things of that nature. Then we will put a formalized complaint together for their review and their signature. And then they sign that, and that is their official complaint. And when that complaint comes back, it is then assigned to an investigator based on our caseload, and then we take that case from beginning to end. Now, also in this form, in this packet, with this background information form, is another form that is put out by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We operate under a cooperative agreement with HUD. We process cases for them. And basically, they fill out this form too, the complainant does, and then we submit this form to HUD, and they will review it for their jurisdictional requirements and assign it a number. And Mr. Moss is going to talk a little bit more about that cooperative agreement and what that entails and how that works. And it's under the Fair Housing Assistance Program, so we're known as a FAP, and that's one of the points that he is going to clarify with the resolution as to what FAPs there are in the state of West Virginia right now, other than us. We are the only state agency FAP that's there. So that's basically just a brief overview of our intake process. It's not a very complicated process. We want to make it as simple as possible for people to access our services. So we want to make sure that we're available for them to do that. And that's about it.
Josh mentioned that I would talk a little bit about, explain a little bit what a FAP is and what that means to us as a civil rights enforcement agency. In 1988, after the Federal Fair Housing Act was passed, it provided a basis for HUD to examine, review, and assess local and state human rights laws around the nation. They did that, and they determined that a lot of laws, like ours, for example, were substantially equivalent to the federal law. So in an attempt to be supportive of those state and local agencies around the nation, they entered memorandum of understanding agreements and cooperative agreements with those agencies who chose to participate in the program. Now that meant that usually there was a revenue stream available to us which may not have been available before. So we certainly tapped into that and have been consistently since I guess the first memorandum expired in about 2000. And periodically it will assess the performance of the agency to determine whether or not we are holding the standards that they set for agencies to be certified. Our last assessment was recent, 2010, and we have been recertified through the year 2015, which means basically that our performance overall has been up to HUD standards, which means also that we're processing cases. We are taking in cases to where we should be taking them in. We're investigating those cases thoroughly, impartially, and reaching determinations that HUD also concurs with. One of the things that Josh mentioned earlier was, I think he mentioned dual filing, and that just simply meant under this agreement that we work for housing assistance programs, we'll dual file the case with HUD simply because the case could be also handled by HUD. In other words, the jurisdiction, the basis fits both laws. So either agency could actually work on the case in order to complete, in order to eliminate duplication of effort Usually when a complaint would come in to the HUD office, lots of people can file their complaints directly with HUD. If it comes into HUD, HUD has the right to defer the case, must defer the case to the FAP agency or Housing Assistance Program that is in that jurisdiction. Now, that means for the state of West Virginia, we cover all of those, except for in the case of the City of Charleston Human Rights Commission, because they also are considered and certified as a FAP. So in the city limits, housing cases that come in through them that are filed within city limits actually can be deferred directly to the City of Charleston. And we don't work with those cases. Generally, when they defer a case from HUD, that means that they leave the local or the state agency all the work. Basically, we do all the work. We do the investigation, we complete everything, and then when we complete our work, we will share that work with HUD. What that does is we both participate in a shared database called TBOTS, where we can, as we investigate and process a case through the process, we enter data, evidence, documents, recommendations, the whole package, so that they get a pretty good glimpse of what we've done during the investigation electronically. They can go into TBOTS and see where a case is at any time. Okay, so basically that at the end of that process, when we have reached a conclusion, they have a right then to us to decide that we have performed up to their standards, and they in turn will reimburse us for to offset some of the costs of our work towards those cases. Now, it's not really a case where they pay us for the work, but they kind of give us a contribution. We know that it takes more than $2,600 to process a housing case all the way through to a public hearing, or that level, down all the appeals and the subpoenas and kinds that we deal with. All the work that goes under that certainly is worth more than $2,600, but the $2,600 that we sometimes get in some cases helps defray the rest of the cost, and also helps us to buy some of the equipment that we use, keep our software upgraded, things of that nature. So there is a funding stream that comes through as a result of our performance.